There we go. Oh, there we go. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. It's great to see you at this odd hour. Sorry about that. Busy days. Busy days. Everything is so much more difficult when you are recovering from surgery. I should have known. I should have known. Moving slower. Everything is difficult. I just couldn't. I just couldn't get there this morning with all of the things I needed to do before. Thank you so much for tuning in now, and this will be here for you later. If the change of time was confusing today, I'm so sorry about that. I like to keep things pretty uniform for me too, but it's great to see you now. Welcome back, Kirsten. Decaf coffee time. Oh, I wish I would have thought of that. I didn't. I just popped back like four more of the Motrin or whatever with some water. I cannot seem to stay in front of this stupid arm pain from the surgery. Oh my God. It'll go away eventually, right? Linda, great to see you. Howdy from. It was spring showers here too. I was looking for the rainbow. It is like crazy, crazy blazing sun while it's raining. That's the perfect formula, but we didn't see any rainbows over here. Maybe over there. Cheryl, good to see you. Good afternoon. Sun is finally out. Hope your arm is on the mend. I have to assume, I'm going to change my glasses. I have to assume it is. It feels awful. It's just awful. It's so horrific and gross, you know. Deborah, great to see you. Good afternoon. Feeling a little bit better. I guess I'm over. I just came in from the studio. Guess who didn't have time to say hello yet? I don't think you've seen him since he's had his hair cut, right? Oh gosh. Oh, jeez. Here I am. Here I am. There's Buttons the dog. He went to the groomer this weekend. I don't like this look as much as the hot mess look, but I think he's probably comfortable and feeling a bit handsome, you know. Yeah, there's not. He's checking to see if there's any food up here. There's no food. There's just pills and water. Catherine, great to see you. Good afternoon from Missouri. A perfect spring day. Oh, good. It's good reports all around so far. Lisa, great to see you. Happy afternoon. Elizabeth, great to see you in Port Elgin, Ontario. Great to see you. Welcome. I'm so glad you're there. Melanie, hello from. I spoke too soon. Gloomy and cool Washington. I'm sorry. The sun is on the way. I know it is. Cindy, great to see you. I grabbed your rug. I have to box it, but I literally just got back from the studio, so that will be on the way, I promise. Karen, good afternoon from Black Forest, Colorado. Spent the morning cutting away last year's growth from the gardens. Ooh, that was a handy thing to do though. Lots more to do, but at least it's a start. Yeah, it's good to get going with those big projects, right? And then they have a shape after you whack away a little bit, literally. It has a shape and it's not quite so daunting. Joyce, great to see you in Pennsylvania. Dave, hi, all sunny in Toronto. Oh my God, banana cheesecake muffins. Are you kidding me? And coffee. That sounds incredible. That sounds incredible. Um, we went to this place this weekend. This place, I won't say the name of it. It was a really cute name. I might have said it in the last episode. It was cute. It wasn't like the best food I've ever had because we're big fans in this family of like crappy roadside places just because diners and places that say like family restaurant, lounge, cocktails, and like the lights are mostly burnt out. Those are the places for us because they normally have a giant menu with everything on it, and the kids will both be pleased. That's a very tall order, but if there's a chance that there's both pancakes and a hamburger, respectively, things are going well. And I got a meatloaf, and I have to say it reminded me of the cat's like pate food. You know what I mean? Like a mousse. It was in a mousse form rather than like. Don't you think of meatloaf as being like chunky and textured and like I don't know. If you're a vegetarian, you're like, will you stop? But it was like it reminded me of the mousse that like when I accidentally get the mousse for the cat because the cat doesn't like the mousse and nor do I. But I had that and then I washed it down on my great diet with a banana no, a Boston cream pie. I was going to get the banana cream. I made a terrible mistake. And I got the Boston cream, and I was so surprised because the Boston cream pie had a cake batter base. Is that right? I mean, I eat Boston cream donuts from time to time, And I know that's like a donut base, but I kind of thought a Boston cream pie was like a cream pie with a crust, but not a cake. I was thrown for a loop. The kids were happy, so I didn't say anything, but I was thrown for a loop. I feel like if I'm gonna do, I mean, don't get me wrong, I finished everything, but if I'm gonna do that kind of calorie damage, I don't want to be eating like cat food with like. I'm not a big cake person, but I am a big pie person. I was so disappointed, you know. Do over, do over. Oh, Louise, great to see you. Hello in Pennsylvania. Oh, it has been a long time since I've been able to join. You know, sometimes when we have something at a different time, that's enough to do it, right? We get different buddies on at different times. Oh, speaking of which, speaking of buddies, I have to show you something before we get started. I met up yesterday with my friend Sherry, who I haven't seen for ages. She was my good buddy, like my best buddy when we were in our 20s, and we were wild women, and we traveled through Europe together. I mean, we traveled all the time. We would waitress, and then we would wait because we were both. I think I took a year off college right then after my freshman year, and we were both waitressing at the same place, um, and we would waitress like just we would do like triple, quadruple shifts because in those days they didn't care. Like there was no rules about you did too many hours this week, but we would work, and save, and then take a plane to like we went to Italy and England. We went to England a few times, and Paris. We had such good times. And then I lost track of her because I ended up living in Europe for such a long time. And she was here, and she started her family a lot earlier at a normal time. Like I think in maybe her late 20s, 30s. And I started mine in my 40s. So we lost track of each other. And I saw her a few years ago, and I think we're slightly on different pages still, just with like our life timelines and all of that. I was just moving here from abroad, and it was just a confusing time. And then the other day, I wrote to her, and we got chatting and stuff. And I found my scrapbook. That's what it was. And I said, "How did we afford to go on these trips?" And she said, "Don't you remember the way that we worked to be able to afford it?" So anyway, I met up with her yesterday, and it was so nice to see an old friend. You know, it was just like it had always been. I know that you have friends like that, I hope, and you know that feeling of like 25, 30 years just dropped away. We were imbeciles again, sitting at a tavern, somewhere in London, somewhere seedy. But it was so much fun, except we were in a more expensive place, like on the Connecticut River. But and we weren't afraid that like our cards wouldn't go through when we paid for our food. But other than that, it was all the same. And the first thing we did was stop in this cute town called Deep River. And I just wanted to show her a bunch of the little Connecticut River towns and how cute they are. And I knew there was an antique store on the main street of Deep River. And as we approached, right, as we approached, like beautiful old timey town, very cute, one block of business, right, like a couple of cafes and the library. At the library, they have like wine tastings and chocolate tastings. I was like, ooh, what a library! And behind the street, down one side of the street, deep down, the name of the town is a river, right? I'm not sure what the name of the river is, but it's a very small one, and it's way down, like in a gorge. So we parked there, and right in front of the antique store, all the flowering trees are like blowing blossoms all over the sidewalk. It was like in a movie, it was like pink snow coming down. And it was like there was a moment where I couldn't see anything. It was just so bright, and all these flower petals coming down. And I looked down on the ground, and I went, "Is that a hook drug?" It was. It was a hook drug that I've never seen before. You let me know if you've seen it. And I'm in the sunlight right here. I'm in the kids' room. But it's a lot of, let me see if I can pull back a little bit. It's a cat. It's a cat wearing a lovely chapeau. And there are some pretty flowers. I'll take a head-on picture of it because it's big. But you see what I mean? How pretty. And it says, let me see if I can. It should say on one edge. Where is it? There it is. There's a mouse there. And it says what does it say? CJ92. How cute is that? I've never seen this pattern. If you have, please let me know because I'd be so curious. I can look it up in my books. I just don't have time right now. Isn't that a funny background too? The black kind of hit or miss with the shots of blue just radiating. Isn't that different? So this was a great deal. Do you want to guess how much? It wasn't a lot. I mean, God knows I don't need another rug, Um, but it was one of those things where it was such a day, such a moment. I was in such a happy mood, even despite this stupid arm. And that thing was there on the sidewalk. It was $65, marked down to 50. And I was like, there we go. I've got to have it. Just such where to put it is the next question, but just such a good memory of that day. And Sherry found some nice stuff too. I found also a tomato pincushion. But what a lot of fun, right? What a lot of fun. What an adventure. And you know who it reminded me of? Just kind of cruising around aimlessly. We didn't really have a plan. My big, I was trying to engineer a situation where my GPS forced me to cross the Connecticut River on the country's oldest ferry, the Hadlime Ferry, but it doesn't open until May. So I figured it out. We got to the right town. We got to Deep River, and I figured out. We went into Chester, went to this beautiful glass store. That was so much fun. I ended up getting. Hope my sister's not watching. I ended up getting there was a glass blower in there, and he let us put on the dark glasses, not like the oven, not like putting stuff in the oven and doing big things, and putting the pot, what's it called, ponto, something with a mark on the bottom. It wasn't that scale of things. He had a little flame that was shooting out from the table, right? It would look like fireworks, but a steady flame. And then he had two wands, like canes, that were like Millie Fury kind of canes, but just solid colors. And he was putting them together and making them do loopy loops and stuff. And he was making a pendant, and it was a very small scale project. And his hands were close to the flame, but obviously not in the flame. And it was so fun to watch him for a little while, and it made such a nice, warm, familiar smell. But I realized, like, it smelled like a smell that I know, except I don't think I've ever smelled it before. You know what I mean? It was so like it was pulling on my idea of like, oh, what if there's past lives? And it just reminded me of 100 things all at once. It was such a unusual, cozy smell, so warm and yeah, interesting. Super fun. And I ended up buying these two big glass goblets. They're like hand blown goblets of Pyrex, right? So not exactly glass, but Pyrex, so very durable and can be used hot or cold with, putting them in the fire and stuff over a bonfire. But two big goblets with like color changing swirls. And instead of a stem, like a handle to a glass, it was like a straight stick that came down, but also made of glass, right? And the idea is that if you're sitting on the beach and you're having your drink, you stick it in the sand like a steak because it's a long glass, end to it, handle, but no base to it. And I thought, how stupid is that? How many accidents can one have with that? And then I thought, actually, that's amazing because when I have a drink at the beach on the edge of the Adirondack chair, it's always a little slanted and it often falls. Misery, right? Heartbreak. So I thought, at least with that, you put it in the sand, you know it's in the sand and it's not going to tip over. Oh, interesting. It was a lot of fun. It was super interesting. Oh, Kirsten, you know that ferry. Oh, it's so much fun. It only takes like 4 or 5 cars, and it's always, it's one of those things where the first time it happened, it was the TomTom days before the GPS and all that. And the TomTom had me go to the river, and I was late to get to the theater on the other side of the river, the Goodspeed. And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, it's got me perpendicular, dead ending at the Connecticut River." And then I saw this little thing that looked like a Huck Finn's raft. Like, honestly, like just this open square, chugging its way, and I was like, "Whoa, is that like a ferry?" Is that big enough to be a ferry? And it was, and it was amazing how quickly it like kind of docked, and the guy opened the chain. The other cars just got off, like business as usual for them. And I was like, and he's like, get on, and I pull on, and then it's like $5, and it's like, oh God, good thing I had cash, right? Because they don't take cards or anything like that. And man, we were across 2 minutes later, we're like across the river, like driving up to the theater. I thought, this is amazing. It was so beautiful. You can see Gillette Castle like up on a ledge up there, up on the hill. It's so pretty, so much fun. But that moment that happened years ago, that I was surprised by the ferry. It just reminded me that it's not good to be in too much of a rush, isn't it? I mean, like the whole stop and smell the roses thing is not for everybody every day, but it was like a big wake up call. Like, yeah, just pull it back a little bit, to myself. Like, just try to enjoy and flip things in my head rather than being like, oh, for the love of, And it's like, we made it in time, and it was actually an amazing thing to discover at the same time. It was so much fun. Ryan, good to see you in North Texas. You are organizing massive book collection shelves. That is so funny. I was doing that earlier at the studio. Isn't it fun to organize books, though? You finding some old friends that you forgot about? Oh, that's one of the best things. Peace and love to you too. Let's talk about books right now. Before I forget, on Friday we're going to be Kirsten and I are going to be live together, and we're going to be talking about the Design Like book, which we haven't done yet. So let's do that on Friday. Kirsten's going to be on with me. We're going to be the split window, and we'll be talking about the Design Like book and Design Like 2. So make sure you're tuned in on Friday for that. This coming Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be here together talking about that book. And you can bring your questions or send your questions if you aren't going to be live. It'd be a lot of fun to have your questions. Oh, okay. The other thing I wanted to tell you, I called did I tell you this on Wednesday? I was going through my email, and I remembered that I had been in touch with the library not the library, the curation center, epicenter at Yale over here. And I had been asking them about the 8 hooked rugs. There's only 8 hooked rugs in their collection, but right when COVID started. And it was funny to look back on that chain of conversation with the woman there. She's very proper. And we literally learned about COVID, I think, the day that I wrote her. And she wrote back something like, yeah, no, you can definitely see all 8 rugs, but it might take like a few days, right, because of this COVID thing. And then I wrote back like a month or so later, and I said, I just don't want to lose track of like the conversation. I'm really wanting to see the rugs. I know nobody was going out, not even with masks on. And I said, when the time is right, and the time was not right for so long that I forgot about it. So I found the email by accident, and I wrote to her, and she wrote back and said, absolutely. When do you want to see them, and which ones? And there was one that was not super interesting, and one that is super, super, super large. And of course, the protocol for them at Yale, even though I have a textile degree, right, it doesn't matter. You have to have the right people from Yale unrolling it in front of you. And one of their rugs is like a massive floor size rug. So I said, we can hold on that. I just really wanted to know whether it was pieced together, because then it would make it one of those early commercial rugs that were usually executed by men who put the pieces together, right? Because they were so large, there was no milled backing or woven that could ever be a one-piece job with these huge rugs. So maybe I'll catch a glimpse of it, but there were some other interesting rugs there. And I'll do a nice, probably not a video because I don't want to stress her out, but she knows that I'll be using the images of the rugs that I take at Yale on Friday during the day. I won't use them Friday night because we're doing our thing on Friday night, but maybe on Monday we come back to that. It's nice to know which rugs are where, right? And you should do this too. You don't have to have a YouTube channel or have a rug hooking company to call Yale, or to call the Folk Art Museum in New York City, or to call your people, right, at your museum or your historical society, and say, I would like to see this thing, and it's not normally on display. You can do that. You have every right to do that, right? Even at your big museums, you have every right to request to see items. And you should, if you feel like it, right? Not to be like a wind-up artist, but that's what they're there for. Most of the inventory, most of the collection at any big museum and small is not on display, is never on display. And you won't see it unless you ask for it. So it's worth saying, doing a search for hooked rugs or handmade rugs or rag rugs or whatever. And you'll see how many results pop up. And you could say, like, depending on where you are, oh, I'd like to see number 2, 7, 19, 14, whatever. And I bet you anything, someone will write back and say, that's fine. This is our timeline. We need this much lead-in notice, just like looking at a house or something, right? We need this much warning. And yeah, more, the odds are that they will show you whatever you want to look at. So it's worth going and photographing it, and then maybe share for a gallery night, or share so that we can look at on the show together at the stuff that you found, take some nice photographs and take some notes, right? So we can all know what kinds of rugs and made by whom are scattered all over the place, right? It would be a fun project to put together in our heads. Shannon, good to see you. Loved Monday's coffee time. Oh, yeah, we were talking on Monday about the fairs, right? Doing the fairs and that whole hornet's nest that might be either very, very straightforward, friendly, and fun, or hornet's nest, right? But it was good to give it a shape. Um, and to encourage everybody, I think, to submit stuff somewhere, and to do some of that great outreach stuff so that new people can come to the craft, right? So, because of the length of time we talked about, I'm looking for my I'm looking for my clips here. Kaz sent me these beautiful William Morris clips. I wanted to look at more of the Kent book, right? And I can never get enough of this book because it is a 1930 book that is written by Kent, who is so knowledgeable about hooked rugs, but not a rug hooker. And he's got the most. We'll look at a bunch of the images in this episode, but everything that he says, although some of it is really outdated, like it's very antiquated. The information is not necessarily accurate anymore with current thought. But a lot of what he says is opinion, and as I say, probably unfairly mansplaining. So the more of that he does, the more I get a feel for what he likes, what he's looking for, and his great road trips all over the place through New England into Canada, trying to collect as many rugs as he can for his own collection so that he can start writing on them, recording it, shoring up the conversation, because he is I think he's the most prolific person at this stage, right? To write 3 books in a row is like, these are not blockbuster books, right? Even in their day. We know that Pearl McGowan is already working in the 1930s, already collecting rugs, also driving around searching for rugs, recording them, right? But she's not at the point quite yet, where she's starting to write her books yet. It'll be a few more years. Ralph Burnham, we know, is well into the scene as well. He's less mobile, right? He's very mobile. He drives around and collects, but he sets up a store, and then people are coming to him too, right? So it's like a revolving door at his place. Rugs coming in, him going out, searching for rugs, fixing them, refinishing them, and recording them at the same time with so that the pattern is forever captured, right? And thank God for that. Otherwise, we wouldn't know what some of these early patterns look like if they were not recorded. So, while all 3 of these people, it's like the holy trinity of like the early rug hooking scholars. Certainly, I think William Winthrop Kent is the one who does the most written work. He does a lot of talking to himself in the pages too, doesn't he? He kind of has conversation. Like, I should talk. Really, I'm the last person who should talk. But he has conversations with himself, like he's almost trying to figure things out as he writes, right? And we get a taste for that in these episodes where we're looking at the various chapters of the book. This is a fairly useful chapter with some dated information, but this is chapter 5 I want to look at right now. And this chapter is called Source, Suggestion, and Decadence of Design's Certain Late Utensils. So that's a confusing one. This is not to be confused with the chapter that's about what was the inspiration for these earliest 19th century rugs. No, this is a little bit more specific. So in this chapter, he starts off by saying, every earnest collector knows that the hooked or drawn in or pulled in rugs that are called different things in different parts of New England and Canada vary greatly in design. Let's hold for a second there. So just a reminder, right? Put it in your bag of tricks, right? File it in the front of the Old Memory Museum. We say hooked rugs now, but they would often say drawn in rugs, right? Because you're drawing something into the backing fabric. You're drawing it in. You're pulling it in. They're calling them drawn in or pulled in rugs, right? Those are absolutely legit phrases, right? People would have known from region to region, if that's what you said, that's exactly what they called a hooked rug. It was interchangeable language, right? So he says, in early days, many of the patterns were suggested to isolated rug makers by natural forms. Leaves, ferns, grasses, garlands, flowers, birds, fruits, beasts, fish, etc. Even the effects of the sky and sea, field and mountain scenery, were attempted in crude form, often with fair results. I have to hold there too, because so this chapter comes before the chapter that we started with in this book, where we talked about what the inspiration was for. Uh-oh, why does my screen look wrong? Hopefully you're still there. Um, Everything went away from me. Hopefully you're still there. Let me know if you are. That's frustrating. Um, Never saw that one before. I'll keep an eye out in case somebody says, yes, I can see you. I hate it when this happens. Okay. Oh, interesting. I lost my dashboard, so I'm just going to keep going. Thank you all. So this is the predecessor to the other chapter where he talks more broadly about design. For whatever reason, he thought it was justified to have this chapter first, where he's specifically talking about natural forms and their inspiration. Now, what do you think? I'm not challenging him when he can't. I'm not going to debate with him when he's not here to return my thoughts or my remarks. But I would say just the statement alone really confuses me because, for example, when he says that people, early rug hookers are trying to recreate the effects of the sky and the sea, but not very well, right? Um, that makes me think. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that that's true because if we are indeed talking about the earliest rugs, then we're talking about rugs that feature almost always hit or miss patterns. And if we're talking about hit or miss patterns, the person who was making the thing already knew that they did not have enough blue to do something painterly and artistic, right? They just took the closest colors they could out, filled in as much as the sky in one color as they could, went to a second color, third color, 10th color, depending on the supply that they had handy. Like, you get what you get. I don't agree with him at all that there was a huge attempt with these earliest rugs to do realism, right? Because he's saying there was an attempt, but it was usually quite poor, the result. I don't know if that's fair. I think people were working in a very different style. These very first rugs starting in the 1860s, I think they were working in a very different style, and they were completely at peace with knowing it was going to look scrappy and that they would be running out of color. And I think some women more than others became real experts. I'm on a live show. Became real experts at splotching out these fields of color in an artistic way, knowing they were going to run out of color. So I'm not sure that remark, I'm surprised that he even made that remark, because he's got such a good working knowledge of different kinds of motifs and images that people would hook. And he doesn't ever use the expression hit or miss because we're not really saying that yet. Remember, he says mosaic, things like that. But it surprises me that he would be critical at all about the execution of these early rugs in terms of color placement and how they don't look like realistically like it's fading into an actual sunset or light coming through the actual trees. It really wasn't about that at that point, was it? So he says seafaring folk or those dwelling near the sea often represented the compass, capstan, anchor. I don't even know what a capstan is. Anchor and even boats and ships, shell and fish forms. So nautical themes for seaside places. That makes sense. Draw what you know, right? Maybe that makes sense. Houses, especially farmhouses and homesteads, huts, camps, and settlements, views of towns are sometimes pictured, often indescribably bad in color and drawing, sometimes well done and of interest. Well, again, right? You can't really crack on people for their lack of talent. These are thrift rugs, right? This is a poverty craft at this point. Um, and yeah, limited color. I think the fact that a house even resembles a house is something of a triumph right there, right already, right? Mr. Burnham, so this is Ralph Burnham he's talking about, who has probably seen more hooked drugs in his 35 years than any one man, gives a list of designs. Well, I wonder at this point whether, okay, in 35 years, not in his 35 years, because I was going to say, wait a minute, because that doesn't make sense time-wise. So at this point, 1930, Burnham has already been in the business. If he's saying 35 years in 1930, then that is 1895. So when he gets into it, rug hooking is about 30 years old. Interesting, right? Interesting. Judy says capstan is like a winch to help haul ropes. Oh, interesting. Okay. Is it something that slides up and down a rope, or is it something like a pulley at the bottom? I just can't picture it. I'm going to have to look that up. Um, so he acknowledges that Ralph Burnham has seen more, he thinks more rugs than anyone has seen so far, hooked rugs. And he gives a list of designs that he's found. What he does, he catalogs them very closely, and he gives general categories of design. It's going to be apples and oranges talk with this stuff, because when I think about Ralph Burnham's catalog, right, he can talk about houses and cottages and things like that. It's all about language, isn't it? I know we've had this conversation before. This is like a throwback from when I did my grad stuff in literature, right? We would always have these weird conversations about language. And we would always make the point that, at least in the English language, we have a lot of words. I think we have more words than anybody. And you can be so fine and careful about what you mean. For example, I took a walk down this lane, right? It's not a street, it's not a boulevard, it's not a path, it's not a track, it's not a close, it's it's a lane, right? And we have so many words for most things in this language. And same thing with rugs, right? If he says like pictures of houses, well, sure, pictures of houses, but some of them I bet are like big mansiony houses. Some of them I bet are tiny little cottages. Some of them are little Cape Codders or one room, little bungalow type things. Some of them are super just the rude little Henry David Thoreau one room cottage, and others are like houses with lots of L's and wings and gardens outside, right? And these would be completely different compositions depending on what the house looked like. But when we look at these early catalogs and inventories of subjects, we just get houses or animals, right? Once in a while, yeah, do we have horses? Oh my God, do we have horses and chickens? But once in a while, you get like a skunk or a badger or a dolphin or something, a unicorn, right? So even with these categories to rely on, like the early recording, there's still so many nuances, and there's so much more to research and to try to eke out of the pages of books like this one. So landscapes, motifs, combination, blah blah blah, and he starts to talk about. I'm going to paraphrase. He talks about the different categories of rugs that one would find. These early rugs. So, and by early, it's 19th century rugs. So he talks about laundry list of all of the different animals that he can think of who have been present in a rug, flower pots, baskets, vases, flowers, done. And then he a different category for interiors, some that show people, some that don't, right? The classic interior with the two armchairs and the fire in the center, you know the one I mean? That one's been done forever, and that pattern has been owned by the earliest. It was Garrett Bluenose, but there was American companies too picked that one up before copyright was a thing, and everyone was doing the two armchairs with the little braided rug in the center, usually with a cat on it and the fire blazing. A couple of candles, do you know the one I mean, on the hearth? He doesn't show it in this rug, but you see it often. You see it on eBay and all of that. So he acknowledges rugs that include interiors. He includes in one category, and people are under interiors, which is also interesting, as well as fireplaces, clocks, etc. So he's talking about the different. He's talking about the different styles of rug, different patterns, and then he begins this conversation about these really should be the same chapter about where people might have gotten these great ideas for these compositions they're doing in the early days. So these two chapters are linked, and he doesn't even have them next to each other in the book, which is very strange because it seems like the same conversation. It almost seems like he's saying something different in the first chapter, um, you know, in contrast to what he says later in chapter, what was it, 10 or 11. So he's talking about using wallpapers, textiles, oriental rugs, oilcloths, coverlets. So there are some crossover things. Chinese, boxes, tea chests. So again, another laundry list of different things that he said might inspire people to create these compositions. I'm going to paraphrase, blast right through this whole thing because it's really reminiscent of what he said in the other chapter, but I think the other chapter was a bit more interesting. This is the chapter where he gets into the subject about mosaics and whether the idea of doing a hit or miss background or a modeled background is based on a mosaic. I really I said in the last episode, I'm not going to talk about that again, but I don't think so. I don't think so. Um, it's just funny because he was such a upper class person. You know, he had so many opportunities. Every opportunity was afforded Ken, right? Travel, art museums, galleries, collections, collecting, like all of it. And for whatever reason, it gave him the kind of idea that everybody, including people who made poverty rugs, everybody was familiar with the same sort of social or cultural, nowadays we would say memes or tropes, but of course they wouldn't have said either of those things back then. He also mentions catalogs, like people who get to see different catalogs, that would be a great source for inspiration, right, in design. Let's look at some of these designs because in this book, and oh no, oh, I'm not going to be able to do it because my dashboard's gone. Let's see if we can just do it straight. I hate it when something wacky happens. That makes me so upset. Okay, I'm going to assume I'm still good. My whole dashboard's gone. I'm going to hold up this is not going to be fun, is that? Shoot. All right, let me think. Let me improvise really fast. Because normally I show them to you as the slideshow, but that's not an option at this moment. I've never seen this before. It's, I wonder if it's updating as we speak. Well, let's look at a couple of them together, and then I'll probably stop short. I'm just thinking if there's anything else I could cover, since this is a real thing, isn't it? Gosh, that's frustrating. Yeah, we'll just do it. You know, let's look at this. I know I've shown you this before. I don't think I've shown it to you lately. Let me see if I can show you this little image right here. Do you see that top image? Now, what does that look like to you? And again, I'm sorry I can't click the slides, but you see that little top image, how small it is in relationship to, you know, the picture under it. This is just a tiny, tiny picture. Not one of his pics from Antiques Magazine, right? It says early American, possibly Canadian, dark field in ivory wheels with deep red background between the spokes, etc. Collection of Mrs. Charles Halsey. Now, when you look at that, what does that remind you of? If you saw that in somebody's house, let's pretend it's 1880. You're visiting a neighbor. You're riding around on some kind of pony trap. You arrived at the neighbor's house. You haven't been over there for a while. There's a few new additions to the house, right? Maybe they've got some more bits and pieces around, more than they did last time you visited, and this rug is there. And you see it, and what would it remind you of? Of course, you can't put yourself in the mindset of hey Jess, of someone in 18 anything, right? But I would say for myself, and I'll wait for your answers to come in, it reminds me of doilies. Now, paper doilies, I don't think that, because that's like stamped or cut paper, I don't think that's a thing yet. But certainly lace doilies are a thing. I also know there's a lot of early pressed glass where they do the cutout around the edges. Do you know what I mean? Looks a little bit like that. Also looks a little bit like snowflakes. Could be any of those things. Joss, look what happened to my screen. Like the entire thing is gone. Don't touch, don't touch. Well, like all of my stuff here with the slideshow is gone.
Oh.
And everyone said I'm still there, but now I'm worrying again that I'm not actually there. Don't touch. No, get.
Where's your?
It's right here. You're scaring me. Don't touch. Okay, we're doing some dangerous business. It came back. Oh my God, it came back. Jocelyn, thank you.
Yay.
Yay! Oh my gosh, come here, little puff. I can't believe it. Yeah, you did it. You really did it. All right.
You didn't see.
Yeah, we can't add crazy words. Okay, thank you. Guess what? Let's do it. God, that was stressful. All right. This is where we ended last time. She's so good. This is where we ended last time. Remember we were talking about this crazy little guy with the two equally big circles and then the weird little scrolls. It has so much charm, but come on. This is an oddball rug. If you see rugs like this, whether you love the way they look or not, and they're affordable, you really should pick something like this up. When it looks oddball like this, it is absolutely not a commercial pattern. It's someone's brainchild, and with all of these different materials. So Karen says, reminds me of manhole covers, but they wouldn't have had those in the 1800s. No, they would have had those in the 1800s. But these are, oh, the what, the lacy one. Yeah, the lacy ones. Yeah, they would have had those in the 1800s. That's not a bad thought, actually. They were quite simple then, but I don't know. The only thing I know about manhole covers is that book on quilting, right? There's two books on quilting, and the theme is manhole covers. We talked about this on a really early coffee time, but yeah, no, they definitely had manhole covers, but I feel like most of them had text on them, right? In the days when everybody stole everything. but but yeah, interesting. It could be manhole covers. That's really interesting. So we ended on this one last time. Let's spring forward. Spring forward. And let's see what the next one is he chose for us. All right. Now this is incredible. I'm going to find this in the book so I can read you what the caption is. Now, I'm going to say it again. I've said it before, and I've got to say it again. The rugs that he chooses to show us in this book, right? This is why he eventually needs 3 volumes. He chooses legendary rugs. None of the rugs that he has chosen have like no value, no merit, no creative, artistic merit. Everything he chooses is over the top. Yes, Joss?
Have you seen this guy's mouth?
I didn't. Here, while I look for that, you want to come over here? Go ahead and show them what you made.
It doesn't have the mouth right now.
It's a puppet, right, hon?
Yeah.
And what's his name?
This one's Cotton, and this one's Candy.
Cotton Candy. 3-dimensional puppet making at its best, right?
There would be like a mouthpiece right here that can make me move his
Oh, yeah,
mouth.
where did his jaw go?
That's what I was asking you.
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't playing with him behind your back, I promise. It's got to be on the floor somewhere. My guess is the floor. My guess for everything is the floor. Where is it? The floor. That's just where we are with our lives. I can't find this particular rug. Get it.
The floor though.
Oh, check it again. Check it 11 more times, Joss, and then come back. Yeah, I can't find that one. I'll have to read what I have for you right there. That's funny. I had them in chronological order. A bit of a hot mess today, huh? All right. Whatever. Let me see. Is that it? Hold on. Nope, that's not it. All right. Well, let me unlock and let me see. Let me unlock this guy. Let me see if I can lift him up a little bit, just so we can. And Kent like never attributes anything, so it's not like I'm expecting only one rug. So no, that's all I've got. Dang it. He doesn't actually attribute. It's just, is it Antiques Magazine, or where do you find this one? But this is another exceptional rug, and I have to assume this is a really large rug as well. The really interesting thing about this for me is not just that it is an incredible size, right? This looks like a full blast room size rug. I think this would fall into that category of rug that we know practically nothing about. This is the most curious category of rug for me. There are references in our lives, right, in our books and stuff, to people making early commercial rugs, usually groups of men, that they would piece together. Okay. Here, let me let her show you, or it's not going to end. So, Cotton Candy has his jaw. And how many of these have you done so far, Joss?
A lot.
Yeah. Yep, it is a lot. He speaks rather well, though, doesn't he? You did a really nice job with him.
Oh,
All right.
I need to change it.
All right. Let me go on with the show, though, honey. It's an excellent puppet, without a doubt. That's the thing about running the show later. Although we love seeing her. Do we love? Yes, we love seeing you. I was just joking. So anyway, yeah, the dang thing eludes me. It's incredible how I can't find that one image. But it does make me think about the idea of it being a commercial rug just because of its vast size, right? It's hard to imagine one person doing this. This does not scream thrifty rug, does it? Not at all. Oh, Judy says, I forgot this was a black and white photo. I was so drawn in how they managed to create such subtle... That's it, isn't it? I mean, it is an absolutely exquisite rug. They have got an over... Page 64, thank you. Oh, thank you, Catherine. Gosh, thank you so much. Oh, my love, thank you. Okay, example of unusually minute floral pattern of recognizable flowers. Okay, you know what? That was worth it. That's really interesting because he's saying these are recognizable flowers. with an image this size, for me, it's very hard to tell. But now that I look at it, I am seeing certainly roses and daisies. It's an interesting composition, isn't it? It's beyond grand. And you know what it makes me wonder right out of the gate? I wonder, we're not going to be able to figure the answer out to this. I wonder if it is a hooked rug. I just don't know. It could just as easily be a sewn rug. I don't think it's a needlepoint rug because I believe that Kent had enough information and enough experience looking at rugs to know the difference between a needlepoint rug and a hooked rug. But you can't. There are a lot of categories of sewn rug where you're not using a hook, and we would never be able to tell. This is not a poverty rug. This is not someone with a rag bag sitting by candlelight, at the end of the day trying to put a few more rows in so that their feet aren't cold when they exit the bed in the morning. It's not that rug, is it? This is a vast rug. It's a huge project. It is almost certainly not a one-person project because how long would this take someone, right? Like this has got to be the kind of enterprise that many people were working on it at once. Let's try to glean some information from it just looking at it together, because you know as much as I do about rugs, right? So when you look at this rug, let's look at the most obvious things about it that might give us clues. The shape, right? It looks like a nice squared piece. We can't really remark on that because whether or not it's perfectly squared could be the work or the fault of the photographer, not the maker. So we have to eliminate that layer of interest and just say, in terms of the border, man, that border is good. Like, look at the outer border, the little ferns and leaves, right? And in the corner, very intricate knots in the corner, small, very small, but intricate. And it makes you wonder, ooh, why the knots? Was this for the living room of like a sailor's or a sea captain's house? No, it's not going to be a sailor's house, is it? A sea captain's house, right? Because those look like very fancy knots. It's not a Celtic knot, and it's not just that kind of branch or that stem was resolving itself. No, these are proper knots. They look like nautical knots. In fact, as I look at them, they all look like the two bottom ones at least look different than the two top ones to me, which makes me think, is that a reference to the person's occupation whose house it was going into? Maybe, right? If rugs work the same, we don't know a lot about people commissioning rugs and paying for them, right? We don't know hardly anything except that it happened, right? It's recorded in diaries and in expense books, but we don't have any accounts that I know of where someone says, oh, you know who I hired to make us a rug for the living room? So and so. And you know who works for him? This guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy, right? And he charged me this much. It's going to have this design, and he's going to get it to me by next spring. We don't have that at all. So everything is we can only speculate. But I will say there seems to be something funny about those knots to me, and I think that's interesting. It's a very tidy border, isn't it? And then if you look at the four corners where it's white inside the rings, doesn't it look like the two on the right are quite similar? And it could be the angle of the book, but I don't think it is. Doesn't it seem like the top left, the northwest corner, there's a little bit more white, and at the bottom left, there's a little bit more white again, right? For a rug this size, can you picture people sitting with it at a table, finishing the different corners? They would not be working on a frame, right? Finishing, they might have it tacked down to like a temporary thing that moves, But I can picture the guy on the northwest corner looking at his corner, then maybe getting up for a lunch break and going, oh, I think maybe my corner sinks in more than the other guy's corners, right? That would be me panicking, comparing and panicking. But there is a little bit of a difference there. And that says to me, absolutely not a commercial pattern. This couldn't be a commercial pattern. How could this ever be a commercial pattern, right? Other than this one person, I'm going to say, like, let's guess that he's a sea captain, because I think that's a pretty solid guess, right? I think that is a reference with those fancy knots. Let's say he's a sea captain. Who else is going to, maybe there's more sea captains in the town. There's not going to be a lot of people in the town who can afford this item, right? And can afford to have people do it for them, right? So, and one woman or a family of women, this is a huge undertaking, right? This, for a few people, this would be the work of years. From what I have heard tour guides say, right, from diaries and things, about these commercial projects, these early hooked commercial projects, what I've heard is that they happened fast. There would be a huge group of men working on them, very awkwardly, I'm sure, like no elbow room, right? Everybody kind of muscled in, and it would get done relatively quickly. I can't give you a date because I've never heard like a timeline, but remarkably fast. It was business, right? It was business. You wanted to get the product to the customer before he changed his mind and said, "How much did I pay for that again?" So interesting. The knots are very interesting, but also interesting to me is the fact that they are recognizable flowers. I guess if we're talking about a professional piece and not just something for the side of the bed or in front of the kitchen sink, if this is a professional piece, I guess there would be more of a push to say like, oh, yes, sir. Well, what kind of flowers would you like to be in your rug? And maybe the sea captain says, well, I've got 4 daughters, and these are their favorite flowers, right? So can you put in roses, this kind of rose, that kind of rose, a daisy, a dahlia, a whatever, right? You could absolutely see that happening because that's how it worked with other stuff at this time, like portraiture, right? So if it worked that way with some arts and crafts, it would work that way with rugs too. Don't you think if someone was taking a commission for a rug this size, that the conversation would have happened along the lines of, I'm going to try the trick again because it went away again. There we go. Conversation would have happened along the lines of, what would you like? What would you like your rug to be, right? Because it hasn't been made yet. I think absolutely it would. And I think he shows us quite a few large rugs in this book. I think they're well worth looking at because, oh, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong screen. Because it brings up these kinds of questions, if at least in my mind it does. It's something worthy of talking about because there's a lot of information in these images. So what? We don't have the answers. We can make educated guesses, can't we? Now this is another beauty. Modeled rug, early American. This is courtesy of Anderson Galleries. I'm pretty sure Anderson Galleries still exists. Magnificent hooking on grayish tan base, borders of blue, whole surface covered with gorgeous array of raised flowers. Yeah, you can use any of those, baby.
Okay.
Raised flowers and many lovely colors. Most important rug at Glick sale on February 6th, 1924. Interesting. Interesting. So this is 4 foot 4 inches by 3 foot 1 inch. Now this is an interesting rug. It's a shame that it's cropped, but what it looks like to me, look closely, and I'm going to stretch it a little bit further for you. A couple of things. It's a raised rug. I think this is a Walderboro. Let's stretch it open a little bit and see what we can see. Get ready to take a ride here. Let's make it large, and I can always move it some more later. I want to look at it together. I think this is a Walderboro rug. And if you're new to the show or you're new to the conversation, remember Walderboro rugs are named that way because of Walderboro, the place, the town in Maine, and the fact that as the tradition goes, in the winter when you would want to bury someone who passed away in the ground, you would so love to put a lovely flower arrangement on the coffin as it went down. But there are no flowers in the winter, and women got into the habit of creating these 3-dimensional hooked pieces so that the flowers literally jumped out at you. Very 3-dimensional, high relief rugs that they would drape over the coffin and bury it that way in place of flowers. And that style of hooking, sculpting the wool, is called Walderboro. This looks like a Walderboro rug to me. Not only that, I'm going to make it small again too, because the composition is well worth talking about. Does it also look to you like it's a braid, like there's a single braided edge around it? Now it's cut, so it's hard to tell, but you see how there's like dots of color that come in and out, light and dark? I think that's a braided rug, braided edge that we're looking at, one strand. See what I mean? Because it looked lacy or scallopy at first, and then I thought, no, I think we got a braided rug here. Let's look at the composition together. I'm going to tip it on its side. I think it's going to go on its side for you too. Let's look at it this way for a minute. This could well be a commercial pattern. I don't think it is, but I can't be sure. I don't think it is because I believe it's a quite early rug, right? I would say if someone said this is an 1860s, 1870s rug, I would say, okay, that makes sense to me. It's a quite early rug. For me, the thing that speaks against it being a commercial design is the fact, and it's not a deal breaker, and I could easily be wrong, and if we find out I am, I'll be so happy because I would love to see this line drawn. I think the idea of the center medallion being that tipped diamond, right? Everybody got that. Everybody knew that. Everyone was familiar with that. It's got the four corners, but within the four corners, there is like a profusion of flowers. The corners are stuffed with flowers. There's so many flowers, right? It almost looks architectural. Doesn't it almost look like, if you look at just half of it, like a headboard or something carved, right? And on the sides, there was a little bit of a break in space. They created some dark space, which was super clever. It reminds me of a like early toll painted tray or the back of a chair, right? Like it's shaped. It's meant to look almost like the black parts are see-through, right? So it really is. It's an interesting idea. Like it looks like an early trompe l'oeil piece in my mind. The thing is, those flowers in the center are really well executed, but around and they appear to be roses, absolutely. But when we get to the border, there are flowers that are just as big, but they appear to be like imaginary flowers. They could be poppies or something like that, but there doesn't seem to be the same kind of emphasis in the border to create the perfection that we're seeing in the center. Now, I'm saying perfection because the ones in the center are very well articulated, and it's just a question of taste. I like the stylized ones better myself. But if you look at all the flowers in the border is handled in a very different way than the center. So that's saying to me one of only a few scenarios. Oh, Karen's saying the corners look like seashells and sand dollars to me. You know, they could be. They could be. Karen, they could be. They absolutely could be. God, you know, you're right. I see that more on the bottom. I'm seeing those shells. What do you call those? Cow something. You know, the shells with the jagged teeth in the middle that look like a hot dog with no hot dog. You know what I mean? Cow slip, cow. Oh, my memory's not good right now. Yeah, you know, you could be right. Those could Oh my God, Karen. This is amazing. Cowrie, thank you. You thought so too, Judy. Oh, okay. I'm closing the book. We're going to sit here for a minute. This is thrilling. Okay, so these are the scenarios that I thought of. You tell me if you feel this way too. I was thinking either it's a commercial pattern and it has this intricate center that's really well drawn and plenty of information about filling it in. And maybe it's a geometric border or a plain border with nothing in it, like solid, because this person has hooked outside of the shape of the finished rug, because we're seeing top to bottom the black bands, right? So, okay, that could be a mourning thing. This could be a memorial rug and they have a black band on the top and bottom. Is that possible? Absolutely, that's possible. Is that common? That is so rare. I don't think I've ever seen it before, but it could be that. So it could be partially a commercial pattern with what was and meant to be a smaller rug. It's definitely meant to be a smaller rug because the proportions are off. Solid background, or it could be that one person started it and one person finished it. That's always a possibility, right? Because they are very different styles. Now, that aside, well, we're never going to know, I don't think, but it's an interesting rug to look at. Now, I absolutely agree with you. I think that we're talking about a floral motif in the center and a nautical motif around the edges. Now, that's interesting because that even makes me think more that this is a rug that comes from Maine, right? Ocean, Maine, Walderboro. Like this, I would be shocked with those two pieces of visual information if this were not an actual Walderboro rug from Maine, because that makes a lot of sense. We're getting all of those hat tips to the seashore. We're getting the flowers in the center that are three-dimensional. This is a really interesting rug, isn't it? I mean, my God, wouldn't you love to see this rug? And remember, the background is done in tans and grays. Interesting. I wonder if they're blue grays. Wouldn't you so love to see this thing in color? Oh my word. You know, I wonder if it's ever a thing to, first of all, let me conclude this conversation because you know how I derailed myself. I don't think I think that this originally was a commercial pattern. I don't think necessarily that two different people made it. It's possible. I don't. There's no reason specifically to think that, other than there's a lot of graphic outlining of the centerpiece and not the outside piece. It's not impossible. It could be, here's the Walderboro flowers. It could be a memorial piece. This could be a piece for a coffin. How it got away from the coffin and back up for Ken to photograph it, God knows, and for Anderson Galleries to sell it. I wonder if it's possible to research Anderson Galleries because, Catherine, what page were we on? 64, 65, right? I wonder if it's possible to do research with Anderson Galleries. I would love to know more about this rug. I'm thinking more that it is a memorial piece because maybe they made it wider so that it wrapped around the coffin, right? And it was wide enough that it didn't just slip off. Do you know what I mean? That it kind of tucked on both sides. And it could be that those leaves are as black as they look and that the bands on the side are as black as they look, right? We're Sherlock Holmes in it, but these things all make perfect sense, don't they? The person certainly has changed the size of it, but it would also make a lot of sense if, doing the Walderboro thing in the center, because that became traditional immediately. As soon as people started doing that, as soon as one woman started doing it, all of the women in Walderboro started doing it. It became known as Walderboro. Now, that coupled with the idea of there being seashells around from Maine, that all makes perfect sense to me. If this is indeed a rug that was on a coffin or meant to be on a coffin, maybe not in the ground, but like at a wake, right over the coffin, and then taken away and saved as a memorial, like how the Victorians loved their hair stuff and all of these memorial art pieces that you would display. And for us now, they're a little bit on the macabre side, but for the Victorians, right, who following in the footsteps of Queen Victoria, depending on the age of this rug, really embraced the idea of death and loss and all of that, right? This could easily have been a memorial rug that did not go into the ground, but was placed over the coffin and was saved. And here it is, right? And then it goes to auction at the Glick sale, Glick, that's got to be a family name, on February 6, 1924. That is so interesting. I do have some. Oh my God. I know I have one Anderson catalog from this period, and it's an all hooked rug catalog. I wonder if it's the same one. Oh my God. Wouldn't that be amazing? I know I do. I got a catalog on eBay a while back, and it was definitely Anderson Galleries, and it was a 1920s. There were no images in it at all. Things were just described, and it was an all hooked rugs auction. I mean, I'm not going to be able to put my hands on it immediately, but it's at the studio. Gosh, I wonder if this rug, if that was the Glick auction. But I do wonder in general, just for the sake of stupidity, I wonder if it is ever possible. If you get a nice person at an auction house like Anderson or Sotheby's or um, I don't know how old Sotheby's and Christie's are. I think they're quite old, right? I wonder if it's ever possible to do any kind of research at those places because they have all. Do they though? Would they have the original photos that they took for marketing brochures and the catalog and all that stuff? I wonder. You would think they would have documented it in the moment as best they could, so that they could sell it, as best they could. But it's an interesting thought because a lot of these rugs that we're seeing, the question comes up whenever we look at these. Well, where are they now, right? Hooked rugs need Facebook. They need to find each other on Facebook, but they're not going to. We have to figure out how to research this stuff in a way that makes sense. Because you know how you just call some random person you want help with something and you're all electric and fired up and excited, and that person already has it in their head that they can't help you? That's kind of life, isn't it? This is definitely something to think about, right? I think we have to start like some kind of official project together at some point where it's like, let's do it. Let's approach, maybe winter is a good time for this. Local historical societies, find out, roll call, find out from one to the next, do they have any hooked rugs? We've got two. Well, two's a great number. Two's a good even number. Can I come down and take photographs of them? Oh, well, they're rolled up in the attic. Well, could you get your old bud up into the attic and bring them downstairs so I could photograph them? Maybe not in those words. But this could be a great project for us over the winter, where people could be, unearthing things, photographing stuff. We could get a lot of documentation going, maybe put a book together, right? I just think this is an interesting conversation. These rugs already exist, and all we have is whatever Kent gave us. Sometimes he gives us two sentences, but usually gives us like one phrase, not even a complete sentence. Sorry about that. So it would be nice to kind of like take the bull by the horns and try to gather some information. There's so many of us who are watching live and who will watch later and say, "Oh, I've got time for a project like that. That could be something fun, right?" It's definitely a worthy project. I'm gonna think on it. You think on it too. See if you come up with a good idea for getting our research a bit more streamlined. And Maureen says an antique rug registry. Now, Maureen, now that you said that, it makes me think that exists, doesn't it? Isn't there an antique rug? No, I don't think there is actually. I think it's the current rug registry, right? Didn't Vermont Green Mountain start a rug registry, but for contemporary rugs? I might be wrong about this. I definitely don't know. You just like jogged like a puppet string in my brain that reminded me of Green Mountain. I don't know that, and if you know, please let me know because then we'd have some footwork, some groundwork done to build on. Has anybody started a rug registry of antique rugs? Right? Has anybody? I can see that there are problems. Believe me, I can see that there's problems. I know that it's like, oh, well, do we have permission from Anderson Galleries to use that photograph? We could figure all that stuff out later, right? This is like a good academic piece of scholarship where we are collecting what we know and pooling our knowledge. It would be such an interesting project too to start hitting up just phone call, not even phone call, right? Because no one's going to pick up the phone at the Historical Society or local house museum. But what if you drafted like a letter? What if one person drafted a letter? Don't look at me. Just kidding. That said, like, this is what we mean to do. Just generally, I'm so we're interested in researching the history of hooked rugs, handmade rugs, right? 'Cause some people would be like, "Is this a latch drug or a hook?" But we could come up with like a uniform thing that you could just email. Just put like your historic houses that are near you on email and see if people respond. Not everybody will respond, but I have to say, volunteers respond better than people who are paid, right? Typically. And yeah, and if it's a project that they're interested in at all, right, that could be an interesting angle. And then I bet you anything, if a bunch of us get going with this project, maybe summer's not the right time, right, because they're all opening to the public and trying to put on interesting shows and stuff and get some funds going until it gets quiet again. But maybe when it does get quiet again, we can really revisit this idea, because I bet if, for example, 100 of us made contact with a historic house or historical society. And oh, Catherine, you may have found the auction catalog. That is exciting. Oh, that's exciting. But I bet if 100 of us reached out and made contact with people, I bet of that number, I bet at least 10 of those, the other person would say, well, like, what are you working on? Right? Because they're always hungry for content. If someone else comes up with an idea for a show or something to talk about, some kind of presentation, that's always good for people who work in these small places and volunteer, because they don't have like unlimited ideas, right? Or unlimited energy. I bet that making a real push to reach out to all of these, not big museums, but small historic homes and stuff, I bet a bunch of people would come back and say, years ago when Marcy worked here, there was 20 hooked rugs up in the attic. I wonder if they're still there. I bet there'd be a lot of those kinds of conversations. And then the follow through would be like, well, what are you doing with the rugs? And maybe then there would be the chance to say like, well, we like hooked rugs. Oh, is that a thing? Well, that is a thing, you know. And then we could talk about. We've talked about this before. We just haven't done it yet. It's something that we could easily do with so many of us. Start putting together materials that we could share for like a library exhibit or something at the Historical Society, an evening talk, right? Just holding up the rugs or having them out on the tables. If 5 people show up, who cares? What a fun night for those 5 people, right? And you don't have to buy that much wine either. Something to think about. Let's think about it honestly. Let's shape that out. We could really be really proactive and get out there and gather some more scholarship, Kent style, right? Kent style. there's a lot you can do just sitting on your butt on the sofa. And God, I love those hours. But, there's so much else you can do if you just start shooting emails out to people. You never know, right? You never know when you cast your net, quite far. You never know what you're going to pull in. It could be really interesting. All right, I better go. I'm going to work on my stuff for Magpie Times. Are you working on anything right now? The Magpie we've got coming up, I'll tell you about that probably next time. Maybe not on Friday because we're working on the Design Like book with Kirsten on Friday. But I'm telling you, oh, the articles that are coming in or that I know are coming and that people are working on for Magpie, it's going to be another great issue. I've got 2 or 3 things that I'm doing. Judy's got a handful. Her stuff is crazy. I did a lot in the first. We kind of alternate. I did a lot with that first issue, and Judy's doing a lot with this issue. But I've still got 3 articles, like smaller articles, and then like a couple other pieces in there, and a bunch of patterns again. Um, Lots of new ideas. It's a lot of new ideas. There's a lot of good stuff coming in. So I hope you're working on stuff for the gallery for this Magpie, Midsummer Magic, anything summery, magic-y. Or the next Magpie, that will be the one that comes out in September. And the theme is country fair, right? So anything like vegetable harvest or Halloweeny, animals, right? Country fair. So, yeah, be curious to see what you're working on. I will be with you again, and so will Kirsten on Friday night when we look at the Design Like book for the first time, like in detail. And so we'll be doing an interview and very informal, very fun. But that'll be coming up for you on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will see you then. I hope you all have a great tomorrow. Oh, wait a minute. What did I miss? Judy says, is that Prince Edward Island, Karen? They have an exhibit coming up next June. Oh, wait a minute. What did I miss? There's a rug registry in Canada. Interesting. Oh, at the North American Hooked Rug Museum. Is that? I wonder if that's the one, Karen. I bet it is. That would make a lot of sense, right? Because they do have a lot of the early rugs. That's interesting. All right. Well, I mean, whatever we can find out, we can contribute to them, right? And we can pull it all together. That's interesting. All right. Lots to think about. To be continued. I'll see you all on Friday. I'm looking forward to it too, Kirsten. Have a great tomorrow, everybody. And we will see you then, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.